$1 million or 1 million readers? Which would you choose as an author? It's not a trick question. Leslie Lefebvre, my guest on the podcast today, has a definite viewpoint. You'll also be fascinated by his take on book piracy. So let's dive in. My guest today, Leslie Lefebvre, is a self-confessed book nerd who began writing at 13 and has been in the book-selling industry for 25 years or more. Mark is the author of more than 20 books that include fiction, thrillers, paranormal, nonfiction, explorations, writing anthologies, and for someone like me who's a nonfiction author, I love his books on being an author, the pitfalls to avoid, and how to publish wide. But most importantly, he and Joanna Penn, who are both icons in the self-publishing industry, have written a book called The Relaxed Author. Take the pressure off your art and enjoy the creative journey. Hello and welcome to the Write the Book Inside You podcast. Tips, tools and interviews for coaches and healers like you who want to write a non-fiction book to boost your visibility, clients and cash flow while making a difference. I'm your host, Carol Westmore, a multi-published author and energy psychology tapping book coach. Now let's jump into today's episode. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I should grab the hardcover version of the book that I just
great,
just arrived.
Yes.
Finally, I ordered one online. It was an exciting book to write with Joanna. Sure. I mean, I've always loved books. I've always loved story, and I love the way that books and story are an obvious marriage. And so, I mean, I was always into creative storytelling. I loved sitting around sharing stories. My favorite part of camping would be we all sit around the campfire and either it's ghost stories or it's just tales. And that's where publishing came from when you think about it. It's people connecting with one another. I'd started writing at an early age, amassed hundreds of rejections because there were no real choices back then. You kind of had to submit them to magazines and markets and build a name for yourself. And 92 was the very first year my first published story appeared in print. And that was also the year I started working in the book industry. And so I've had this beautiful parallel career in both writing and in the business of publishing and book selling as a bookseller and having sort of bounced back and forth. So I've had the good fortune of being able to watch the self-publishing and digital publishing and how that's created way more opportunities for writers than ever before, and also created opportunities for booksellers and publishers, and it's an amazing journey for me. And I've been very fortunate on both sides because I've been able to take advantage of new opportunities as both a book industry representative, but also as an author who's able to leverage these digital platforms that now exist.
It must be quite a parallel path to be in the business, which is fantastic, but also writing. Tell us some of your inner game rituals.
I've been lucky, like I said, to work in an industry I'm already passionate about. And so it was just a matter of reapplying the same passion to, okay, how am I going to hand sell books, or what books am I going to order into my store? Or when I work within the industry, how am I going to advise authors and publishers on strategies that can help them be better? So that's that one passion. And helping others is a grounding exercise for me, because it means when I help somebody else be successful in writing and publishing, I help establish that connection between what they're creating and the consumers who want to, engage with that. That's magic. That's beautiful. Whether I'm doing it myself as a writer or whether I'm helping someone else, because I've always had a passion for storytelling. And this comes back to the speaking, and I love speaking because one of the things, and just recently with the pandemic, it's been 20 months since I've spoken in front of people. And last week in November of 2021, I spoke 4 different times in front of 4 different audiences in 2 different cities in the US. And it was like coming home for me, because as wonderful as this, virtual Zoom video experience is, where you and I can be on different sides of the planet and we can connect with one another from different time zones, there's nothing like standing in front of a live audience and hearing the laughter when the joke hits, right? Or seeing their eyes light up. And it's easier to see body gestures, because if they're just a little tiny visual on a screen, that can be a bit challenging. So that's been good. And one of the ways that I ground myself when I'm not engaged in full on speaking or full on writing and all of those things is those little moments, those little daily moments that keep me grounded. They're almost like these little ricochets in my day that allow me to experience a minutia of that power and energizing thing that I feel. So for example, when I share a dad joke, whether it's on social media or whether it's with my partner and or children, the eye roll, bam, got it, nailed it, right? I got this. Or whether I share a musical earworm or a visual joke, the old Bon Jovi song, you say, whoa, we're halfway there. And then you see a picture of a lemon on a pear. And it's that play on words and the joke. And you're like, oh, I got an earworm stuck in your head. Or I've got some lame dad joke. So these are the things that seem like they're frivolous, but especially during the pandemic, when I was feeling blocked and I was actually having challenged with my bigger creativity, it was parody lyrics, it was dad jokes, it was earworms. Those kept me going and fed me in a way that reminded me storytelling is storytelling, regardless of whether it's a book, whether you're on stage, or whether it's just the little engagements that you can have throughout the day.
If we are writing a book, it's to be read and it's to share. Yeah. Even if it's nonfiction, there will be stories. We share our stories. I share client case studies. I share my own life story. And people relate to that in a nonfiction book. Would you say that what you've shared feeds into you being relaxed, a relaxed author, to get back to the book you wrote with Joanna Penn?
Yeah. I think it's a subtle reminder of why I do what I do. Why am I working so hard? Why am I getting up at 5 a.m. and sitting there and struggling with a manuscript and these fictional characters, or doing the research required to put together a book to help other writers? Why am I doing all of this work with no guarantee that it's going to pay off, with no guarantee that it's going to reach the people that I want it to reach, with no guarantee that it's going to make a positive difference or not? Why do I keep doing it? And that's the subtle reminders are, you do it because it's really about connection. It's really, regardless, right? Whether it's fiction that people read for entertainment or escape, or whether it's nonfiction like The Relaxed Author, where Joanna and I saw, okay, here's something we recognize in ourselves and in the author community. And what is it that we can do based on our experience to bring stuff together to see if we can help writers recognize that there's a lot of things that are causing us stress that we may not even acknowledge. So let's attend to those. Let's talk about those things. I will never say I am a relaxed author. I am probably more relaxed because I practice some of these things that we talk about in the book. I'm never going to be completely relaxed. It's just this constant fluctuating state of being. What I hope I am, though, in the long term and over the grand scheme of things, is between moments of anxiety and anxiousness and fear and all the things that plague us as writers, that I remind myself of the long term, and I remind myself of the value of sticking it out and not getting so hung up in a single moment, but looking at the bigger arc, or since we are writers, at the larger story arc that's happening, the bigger plot, right? This is just a tiny scene.
And in that sense, you had already written a book called The 7 Pitfalls, was it, of being a writer?
Yeah, publishing pitfalls, and then the 7 P's of publishing success. Yeah, very similar idea.
Yeah, two sides of the coin. I remember that one of them was predators, persistence was a big one, patience, which is the long game, and then partnership, which I imagine we see in your collaboration on this book, is that you and Joanna actually jumped on Zoom and talked through it was like sharing your heart with each other. Am I right?
Honestly, yeah. And I hadn't seen Joanna in, well, about 20 months. We hadn't seen each other in person. We were supposed to have seen each other at a couple conferences in the meantime, but they'd been canceled or pushed off, or she wasn't able to come. Neither one of us was able to travel. opening up the Zoom window and just having a conversation with her. And I've never written a manuscript like that before. We had probably 6 different sessions where we said, okay, here are the topics we're going to talk about. And we just spoke open-heartedly as we would if we were at a coffee shop together, or maybe having a drink together when we were meeting at some of these writers conferences. And so it was this really cathartic experience of sitting down virtually with somebody I wholeheartedly trust and know quite well. We've been friends for well over a decade. And most of our friendship has been virtual. We've only seen each other in person, for
can
limited.
I'm just going to interrupt you to tell the
Yeah.
listeners that you live in Canada, Joanna lives in England, and I'm
Yeah.
recording this from South Africa. I follow both of you.
By the time I met Joanna in person, I remember thinking, wow, I know you so well, because we had engaged back and forth so often. So having this open and honest and very vulnerable conversation with Joanna, which became, we used transcription, and that became the first very rough, and I'll be honest with you, it was just like this convoluted dialogue for about 12 hours or significant chunk of time. And then we took that as the first draft and then went in and tweaked it and sort of rewrote it. And so it was this really interesting full circle as well when we finally got to the final manuscript and we went to record the audio, and it went right back to almost feeling like a conversation again.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it's that genuine feeling that the reader's having a conversation with each of you, as if you're answering their questions. That is one of the best points of the book.
Yeah. We have had similar feedback. So even I was just at a couple conferences. I had in-person feedback where so many people approached me and said they loved the book. They also, in particular, really enjoyed listening to it because they were already listeners of Joanna's Amazing the Creative Pen podcast. A smaller subset of them were listeners of the Stark Reflections podcast, my podcast. But in either case, because I've been on her show so many times, they knew my voice. They had heard me speaking before. So hearing Joe and I in our own voices, having that sharing. And the other thing that I think is really important is, even though we're very similar in our overall approach to things, Joanna and I have very distinctive differences among us. And authors can see very clearly through the evidence of what we're doing that we may both approach something differently, even though we're similar people with similar goals and similar outlooks on life. And we're both relatively optimistic about everything, even though we have pessimism fueling us. And they can see that if Joanna and I, who are so similar, can have 2 different approaches to the same issue, that there is no one answer. And the best answer is to figure out what works best for you. And I think that has helped a lot of people recognize, because on the surface you go, yeah, Mark and Joanna both believe in publishing wide. They both think of, the future is optimistic and digital is going to give us more opportunity. But amongst all those things that are similar about us, and of course we also, our fiction tends to be a little bit darker, a contrast to our upbeat personalities.
Interesting.
And so seeing that and hearing that from people, that they read the book or they listened to it, and it felt like they were just hanging out with us, that we were just listening to the 2 of us having a conversation. Like that has meant so much to me, because again, that's why we do what we do, right? We tell story to entertain and inspire. Joanna and I and other folks who do nonfiction books like that, we do it in order to inspire and inform people. And in many ways, which is what all story does, it says, you're not alone.
Shall we pick some of the points that you cover in the book? Pick one where you and Joanna actually were quite surprised you had different viewpoints. And then perhaps, is it in marketing? Is it in the business side? Or is it in writing and publishing? You choose the ones that you think will help people with their inner game of writing and creativity and profit.
Sure. Well, I think, and you alluded to this already, is that reviews, right? Like what is a stress factor for writers is, oh my God, looking at my reviews. Because oftentimes, and this is human nature, you could have 100 5-star reviews and glowing praise, and you have a single 1-star review that says this is the worst book ever, the author should go kill themselves, or whatever negative thing that says. And we will focus 99% of our energy on that one person who hates us rather than the 99 other people who loved us. And so Joe recognizes that it is not healthy, it is not good for her mental well-being, because she recognizes that human nature, that, she'll probably attend more to the negativity than the positivity. So she doesn't read her reviews. I tend to actually dig right in and read them. I take I still get upset by them. It doesn't mean my skin is not that thick, although I have probably amassed more rejection as a writer in my personal life than I always look at the reviews in a different viewpoint. I look at it as, what did I do wrong to put this in front of the wrong person? Right? Obviously, it's a mismatch. Obviously, all this really is, and I have to remind myself this is, hey, Carol, pineapple is great on pizza. Now, when I said that, I'm not sure whether you believe that or whether you're passionate about it or you think that's the most ridiculous thing in the universe. People who listen to that, they're probably going to be one of two camps. There may be a few people in the middle like, yeah, I take it or leave it. But other people like, no, you got to have pineapple on pizza. Another one says, no, that's sacrilegious. You can never do that. And that's what a one-star review is to me. It's the pineapple on pizza principle. And so I try to look at it as, well, how did I get this delivered to the wrong table? And I look at it as opportunity for growth as a writer and what I can learn about my marketing. And on the flip side, when I look at the positive reviews, I also don't let them, it's great. It's a wonderful pat on the back, but I also don't let that get to my head. What I look for in the positive reviews is, what resonated with this particular person that they called out that I may not even have noticed. And in my fiction, that's sometimes been, wow, people really love this one side character that I haven't really paid much attention to. Maybe I'll give them more in the next book. The nonfiction, sometimes it's, oh, wow, people really want more of this. Is there more I can do for them? So I always look at it as a growth opportunity, but it is hard. It is hard because of the negativity we assign. So that's one. Another way that we differed is, Joanna does self-publishing because she wants to be in control. I'm the publisher. I'm in charge. Curl up press. I decide this. I decide that. It's all based on a schedule. And she's also very organized. She is a brilliant project manager. I'm more of a happy-go-lucky, blue sky thinker, flighty, whatever. So the fortunate thing there is I probably stressed her out a lot more than she stressed me out. She probably stressed herself out worrying that she was being domineering. And I was like, no, I love that. This is how I work. I need a strong, solid iron fist. I'll be the velvet glove and we'll work together. And this will be a thing that we can do. And that was an interesting contrast that actually, I think it did stress the two of us out until we had a conversation and realized, oh, no, this is a Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean situation, that we were perfect together to do this because we each filled the roles that worked out really, really well. And again, I'd never had a collaboration like that before. And I think Joanna wasn't sure what to expect with this collaboration. So that kind of surprised and delighted us in several different ways.
Yes, I think a caveat that many people have of going into partnership with anyone, you've pointed that out. I think it could be because you knew each other so well, but I think it also may excite the listeners that there's potential to do something like that. Perhaps that's how ghostwriters work. In this case, we're talking about collaboration. So, and do you think it might work with 2 or 3 people? Or do you think that would really be pushing it?
It's been a while since I've collaborated with more than one other person on fiction. Well, with nonfiction, it's been sort of different. But yeah, I'm open. I'm definitely open. I'm not going to say no to something until I've actually taken a look at it and chewed on it for a bit and see, okay, is this something that may be interesting? That's kind of how I decide how I'm going to do something. Is this something I'm going to enjoy? Am I going to get something intrinsic from it, even if it's not successful and doesn't bring in a lot of money? That is also a factor for me. Am I going to enjoy the process and am I going to get something of it? Even if it only reaches one person and helps one other person, is it worth the time? Those are the questions I often ask myself. When it comes to collaboration, in all my previous collaborations, the other author and I blended our voices and tried to have like a single front, right? Like this is just one voice from the two of us. This is the first time that Joanna and I recognized we do have, even though we're very similar, we do have very distinctive voices. And I'm not just saying that I have a Canadian accent and she has a British accent, but that is, we have different voices. And I think people wanted our voices, not Joe Arc, like if you put
Yes,
our names together or whatever, right? They
exactly.
wanted those distinctive voices because I think that was an important element too, that reminded people that there is no one way. There is
Yes.
there and there are. I have long said, I've said it on stage in 2014 for the very first time, and I've repeated it ad nauseum since then, is that the future of publishing will continue to be more and more collaborative. It'll be people collaborating with each other. It'll be authors collaborating more with readers, authors and publishers and agents and all the people in the industry collaborating better for a stronger publishing industry. And it'll be, as I know Joanna is very passionate about, it will be authors learning on how they can collaborate with the technology and with AI and all the things that are available to us. It's going to continue to be more collaborative. So we can freak out about that and we can stress out about that, or we can know that resistance is futile, but
Yes.
can we ride those waves? Can we enjoy and take advantage of the opportunity that that presents rather than being fearful of the way it once was? It's always that looking forward, appreciating the past, but looking forward with hope and determination. I think that is part of the relaxed author mentality. It's kind of like que sera, sera, but it is sort of an acceptance or an acknowledgement of there are things I can change and there are things I can control and there are things I can't. And how do I navigate within those? That for me is sort of an underlying, a fundamental underlying element supports that relaxed mindset in the long run.
Yes, I honestly think that that is very, very helpful. And because our inner game can be negative or positive, can drop
Yeah,
into the depths of despair. Let's say someone, I mean, we didn't cover plagiarism or someone, pirates our books.
yeah.
And I know that you have a very generous, open-hearted, another reader approach. You want to tell us about that? But it's always about the inner game being one of positivity and what's for the best for me and my
Yeah.
world. But tell us about piracy.
I think of piracy as less, I think obscurity is a bigger threat to us as authors than piracy, because again, and again, I'm saying this not as a international selling seven-figure, best-selling author who is a household name, where piracy may be a bigger issue, but for me, it's nobody's heard of me. Therefore, and I go back to Jack Sparrow from from Johnny Depp playing him on Pirates of the Caribbean. He's like, "You're the worst pirate I've ever heard of." He's like, "Yes, but you have heard of me." That's a positive thing. He's like, "But you have heard of me." Aha! Piracy, I look at it as not as losing a sale, but gaining a reader. And I even am familiar with studies just as recently as just about 6 months ago that were released through, and I'm trying to remember the project coming out of Portland State University, but it was a study of libraries and piracy and their effect on book sales. And they actually found that they actually have a positive effect, because if a pirate reads a book, talk about that, and they talk about this author, or they talk about this book and they love it so much, it's very likely, since word of mouth and recommendations from people like, and trust are still among the highest reasons why people consume content. The people will go and consume content in the way they go and consume content. If they're a thief, they're a thief. I'm not going to stop that. If they are a library user, they're a library user. If they are a person who purchases paperbacks or hardcovers or audiobooks or ebooks, they will purchase it in the way that they're comfortable doing, or they'll stream it or subscribe to it or whatever. We're not going to control that. They're going to do it the way they're going to do it. You've gained a reader who may help you find other readers, which may lead to sales. I often ask authors, what would you rather have, $1 million or 1 million readers? 9 times out of 10, if you gave me the choice, I'd say give me 1 million readers over $1 million any day. Because if
Mm.
I have 1 million readers, I can work with that way better than $1 million, because 1 million readers is a lot closer to my intrinsic value of why I'm doing this. The money is secondary, and I need it to eat and pay the rent and be protected and sheltered, etc. But then $1 million, because 1 million readers is a lot closer to my intrinsic value of why I'm doing this. The money is secondary, and I need it to eat and pay the rent and be protected and sheltered, etc. But and pay taxes, of course, which we all have to do. But that's the thing. But with 1million readers, oh, the things I could do. And pay taxes, of course, which we all have to do. But that's the thing. But with 1million readers, oh, the things I could do.
If there was one thing you could tell your younger self that you've actually learned, perhaps the hard way, what would it be?
I would remind my younger self, because my younger self was a lot more impatient. I'm an impatient person. I still am. I would remind my younger self two things. I would remind myself that to think about the long run, but I would also remind myself of there are moments in life, there are opportunities where if you focus on connecting with people, and if you focus on what you can do to give and to help other people, whether it's entertaining them through story, whether it's just pausing to answer a question or give them just the slightest bit of courtesy, you have no idea how impactful that can be. I've been very lucky over the last 30 years to have actually had people come back, whether it's through fiction I've written, where I've actually gotten comments saying how much something touched them, or whether it's somebody who said, you probably don't remember me, but 5 years ago, I pulled you aside after you got off stage and gave a talk, and you gave me some of the best advice that I've carried with me to this day. There's so many times we've had such a tremendous impact on other people. And so what I try to remember is there are always opportunities every single day, whether it's in your interactions with others or whether it's in the writing and creativity that you do and share, that you will have an impact on others, but you're never going to know about it. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, you probably made the world a better place. And that's a pretty good place to end up.
Thank you. Where can people find the fastest way?
markleslie.ca. You don't have to spell or pronounce Lefebvre. markleslie.ca, because I am Canadian, and then you can find links to pretty much everything from there.
So thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your really extrovert, positive way of looking at life and at the inner game of writing and creativity. The sponsor for today's show is my upcoming book, The Inner Path of Writing: Surprising Ways to Beat Resistance, Boost Motivation and Mindset, from world-famous authors, publishers, and experts sharing golden nuggets for ultimate writing success. The foreword is by Dr. Joe Vitale, aka Mr. Fire. Publication date 2022. Thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Want a free gift to inspire you further on your book writing adventure? My free checklist, 5 book hook tips to kickstart your book writing journey, will help you get clarity on the key essentials to make your book a winner. Download it at writethebookinsideyou.com/free gift. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, a big virtual hug and keep writing.